I want to tell you a story about cricket and dreams. In Australia, there's one Australian men's cricket team. There are 11 players in the Aussie team, and there are 6 states, each with 11 players in them. In each state, there are hundreds of clubs, and I wanted to make it playing cricket for Australia. And that's a lot of people to contend with who might have the same dream as me. There are 20 Australian cricket contracts available at any one time, and there are over 900,000 men registered in the sport, give or take. Straight off the bat, that's a 0.002% chance that anyone's going to get a contract. But I was lucky. I had a couple of clubs in Sydney chasing me to get a few runs on the board. I was going to be a cricketer. During year 11 and 12, I played cricket for one half of the year and rugby for the other half of the year. And somewhere in between, there was supposed to be some schoolwork. You do the math. Now, I always valued school, but so much of my time and my effort was spent on chasing that dream, becoming a professional sports person, that I guess I became a little disengaged, if you will. Now, during year 12, I was playing in a rugby tournament for combined high schools. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was being watched. Now, I got scouted to trial for the ACT Brumbies in their academy program. Now, here I was, 17, about to start my HSC exams, and when I got the phone call. And this was back in the day when we had landlines, and you had to take a chance just picking up the phone because you didn't know who was on the other end. So I picked up the phone, and on the other end was the Brumbies manager. And he invited me to come down to Canberra and trial for the Brumbies Academy, 2-day trial. This was my lucky break. You see, in year 11 and 12, we're in year 12, I was lightning quick, and I was the fittest man alive, or at least I thought I was. Now, on the first day of camp, we had speed and fitness testing. So this went well for me, and I finished top of both areas. And this time, I knew I was being watched. The second day was what changed my journey, and it all came down to luck. You see, I used to play fullback, so I received a kick from the opposing team. I started to counter-attack, and I looked up to see a wall of defence, not a gap in it. Not great when you're coming from fullback. So I started to think, how am I going to manipulate this defence? How am I going to get through? I started running back, and I decided I'm going to throw the biggest dummy, and hopefully someone will buy it. Someone bought it. And in that split second, it gave me just enough space to slip through the hole, use my speed, and score a 60-metre try untouched in the corner. Had I not thrown that dummy and taken that chance, I may not be here today. You see, luck's a funny thing, and it's just that, it's luck. It's not a given, but it's something that you need to have done the work for. When luck presents itself, you need to have done the work to make the most of that opportunity. You see, I'd done the work in the 4 or 5 years beforehand. Training Tuesdays and Thursdays, doing my extras, extra running, extra kicking, extra speed work, to make the most of that opportunity when it arose. So now, my dream of being a cricketer was over. Now, I was going to be a wallaby. So, when you finish high school, you have all these options: where to live, who to live with, earning money, going out, making new friends. But when luck's involved, it's not always like that. You see, there's always 2 sides to the coin. See, here I was, a Brumbies Academy player now, moving to Canberra, away from anything that I knew. I'm away from my family, my support networks, my friends. The only thing I knew about Canberra was that the Brumbies were there. They were the current Super Rugby champions, and that my favourite player was there, Stephen Larkham. Now, Stephen Larkham reminded me a lot of me. He was tall, skinny, gangly, skinny legs, little ankles. But he made me believe that I could be a professional rugby player. And he made me believe when no one else could. You see, when I was 15, I was told by the top bone specialists in the country that I would never play rugby again. They said, "Ben, pick another sport. Rugby's not for you. You've broken too many bones. Your body won't cope." This brings me to my first point. Throughout your life, people are going to tell you things that you don't want to hear. And it's up to you to decide whether you take them on board or not. So here I was, living in Canberra. People think when you finish school, your journey's pretty clear-cut. Not so much. See, nobody told me that I would be running around in -5-degree temperatures, training in the frost and the snow. Nobody told me that I would have to take a job which was unappealing at best, sweeping the floor of a shed. But let me tell you a story about sweeping the floor. You see, my mum's a hairdresser and owns her own salon. I haven't seen her for a while. She lives a long way away. But on Saturdays when I was growing up, I used to play junior cricket in the morning and senior cricket in the afternoon. And at lunchtime, I'd go in and see Mum at her shop, get some money to buy my lunch. You see, before Mum would give me any money to go and buy my lunch, she'd make me sweep the floors of the salon. So here I am in my cricket gear from the morning, sweeping up all the hair. These old ladies are getting perms and whatnot, telling me that I have lovely hair, just to get my lunch. So I guess Mum taught me pretty well. And I guess you could say sweeping the floor of that shed was just like being back home. But it wasn't like being back home. I was in Canberra. I was lonely. I was away from my friends and my family, all my support networks. Everything that I knew growing up wasn't there, except for one thing. I had rugby. I loved rugby. So I put all my time and all my effort into rugby. I was training 4 or 5 nights a week, doing gym, running, field sessions, team sessions, and then I was playing all day Saturday, which was great. But it took its toll. You see, I had setbacks, I had injuries, I didn't play for some seasons, and I kind of fell out of love with rugby. So I took some time away from the game, not too long, and then I came back. And when I came back, a funny thing happened. I was probably more relaxed. I didn't feel like there was as much pressure on me, and I started to play some really good rugby. And this is where luck found me again. I got a phone call from the Brumbies, and this time they were coached by Stephen Larkham. My Stephen Larkham, my idol. So this was it. This was my last chance. I had to make it. Turns out, as roller coasters do, they go up and they come back down. And what I realized in that 3 months training, doing the pre-season with the Brumbies, is that I probably wasn't going to become a professional rugby player. Now, the reason behind this, I wasn't as good as I thought I was in my head. Now, it turns out there's an F word we don't like to talk about. You know it, and I know it, but we like to keep kids shielded from it. We don't like to talk about it. We think it might hurt them. It might stop them from chasing their dreams of becoming a professional athlete, becoming a doctor, whatever it may be. And that word is failure. You see, I came to terms with the fact that I probably wasn't good enough to be a professional rugby player. You might look at that as failure. You might not. But the thing is, and this will bring me to my next point, throughout my journey and that professional area or chasing that professional dream, I had people around me, people I knew, people who I played with, constantly telling me, "You are good enough. Keep going, hang in there. You can make it. You should have got a contract, not him." And that's great. It's really supportive and it's nice to hear those things. But my point is, throughout your life or your journey, People are going to tell you things to which they think you want to hear. But it's up to you to decide whether they are just telling you things you want to hear or if there's some actual truth behind it. So here I was, mid-20s, professional football no longer part of my journey. So I have to start thinking about what I can do. What skills do I have? I need a job, so where am I heading with this? So I sit down to a job search and I start to write down my skills. So first one, I can run pretty fast. Okay. Second one, I can kick pretty far. Third one, I'm still pretty good with a bat. These aren't going to help me get a job. What are you doing, Ben? You see, rugby's gone, cricket's long gone. I need something else. I need to keep moving forward. 4, I'm a team member. Yeah, that was it. I'm a team member. I needed to be part of something that was part of a team to kick goals. I needed to work with people who needed to start kicking their own goals. And this is where luck introduced me to Indigenous education. So my first job in Indigenous education, I worked with disengaged Indigenous students who were struggling to fit in mainstream school, whether that be through attendance, behavioural, that sort of thing. And I'd work one-on-one with them. I usually had about 10 or 15 kids on my books at any one time, and I'd spend a few hours with them each week, just working with them, helping them with different things, helping the teachers to deal with whatever the issues were. From there, I went into working at the University of Canberra in a little bit of a different role. I got to travel a little bit and work in rural areas, Dubbo, Wagga, down the south coast of Canberra, and this time promoting the benefits of higher education and university and different learning patterns for students. So I work with students in high schools. From there, I went back into the Department of Education, working in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander education in the job that I'm in now. And my role now is I'm a student aspirations coordinator. It sounds pretty cool. And it's an amazing job. I get to work with some amazing kids. Basically what I do is I work with students from year 5 through to year 12 and a few university students, but it's all around leadership. So these kids have been earmarked by their schools as potential leaders in their community, sporting teams, schools, that sort of thing. So I work with them in, I guess, to strengthen those leadership qualities. Plus I run a couple of scholarship programs as well for my older kids in year 11 and 12 and university to help them sort of get through there. But the story I want to tell you about this is when I was working in student engagement. And I'll tell you about a boy that I first worked with. For the sake of this story, we'll say his name was Jake. Now, Jake was a year 4 student and he was a big kid. He was one of 10 kids in his family, 10 kids. And he was struggling to engage in mainstream school, and home life wasn't much better for him, unfortunately. Now, the first morning I met Jake, he told me that he liked t-ball. So we grabbed a bat and ball and a couple of mitts and we headed down to the oval to throw the ball around. Things were going well and the time that I'd allocated to spend with Jake was up. So we headed back up to the storeroom to put everything away. I grabbed the mitts, I was putting them away and sort of half turned to Jake and said, "Pass me the bat and I'll put it away as well." Finished putting away the ball, turned to Jake and he was just standing there, staring at me in the doorway. I said, "Jake, pass me the bat and I'll put it away." No, he didn't say anything. He just kept staring at me. And then he lifted the bat over his shoulder and said, "Come and get it." Now at this moment, my instincts kicked in and I knew this wasn't going to end well. And to make matters worse, my heart was beating at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I think both he and I could probably both hear it. But I took a couple of steps towards Jake, waiting for the swing that could come any second. He didn't swing, but he wanted to. You see, what I realized there was I was the fifth, maybe sixth worker that had come to work with Jake in the last 4 years to do the exact same thing. So he well and truly had his walls up. And he was testing me. He wanted to see if I cared. He wanted to see if I would come back. And what I realized in that moment was that it was okay for him to act the way that he did. And it was okay for me to be scared. And what he taught me from that very first morning that I worked with him was that what I want for myself is not as great as what I can give to other people. Just let that sink in for a second. What I want for myself is not as great as what I can give to other people. I wanted to give back to more people. And I started to think, how can I do this outside of work, in my own life? I started thinking and I was like, you know what? I'm club captain of the Canberra Royals, my rugby club. I can make a difference here. I see kids coming out of year 12 every year. We get a new influx of kids every year with these huge dreams, huge ambitions. But what I know is that with big dreams comes big pressure. Now, this is something I've seen firsthand. The pressures and the effects that untreated mental health can have on a club, a community, a family. And this is why I became an Are You OK ambassador, because I'm proud about that. I'm proud to speak up and talk to people about speaking up when you're not feeling okay. Or even if you're feeling okay, but feel like things might not be okay soon. I saw a strong, young, good-looking, amazing rugby player who was the glue of his club take his own life. And I saw the devastating effects that had on a club, community, a family. And I knew that this was something that I didn't want to see happen at Royals, at my club. I knew I had to have a conversation about this with my club. And I needed to lead by example. And that's why I am part of Are You OK? And promote speaking up. And the reason I do this is because 1 in 5 adolescents will suffer from depression. And 8 people in Australia will take their lives every single day. And I need you to ask, are you okay? And I need you to know that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be you. Trust your journey. Trust the right turns and the wrong turns. Luck will find you, but you need to have put in the hard work beforehand. Who you will be may not be who you set out to be. And lastly, help others because they need you. Thank you.